This is literally checking the box so that you as a man are not negligent. Look back in history.
Yeah.
And you can represent the family to the best of your ability if you check those boxes.
Protect your purpose.
This is about control, everybody knows, everyone complies. We're the kinds of pros, I don't need a plane, I just hit the road, I do what I want, I can't sell my soul, market about to crash, this is what you chose, ruining the country, I think that's the goal, you gon' take the mark, I take narrow roads, I'm a man of God, I can never fold.
I remember you were f***ing with me for not being able to figure that thing out.
I figured it out, sir. All right, welcome to the Protect Your Purpose podcast, where we talk whiskey, business, friends, family, and freedom, and today, finance. I'm your host, Matt. Ooh, you said
I like
there,
that.
dude, last minute audible there, yeah. I'm your host, Matt Marchese, and this is my beardless co-host, Zach Grady. Welcome to the show, bud.
Beardless.
Yeah. Lindy's not here today, but we do have a guest coming in here shortly. His name is Chris Sullivan. I'll go ahead and shout out some of his little bio here. Chris Sullivan, first of all, is a good family friend of mine. Been friends for shit, man. We grew up in the same neighborhood, so somewhere to the tune of 30. Yeah, somewhere to the tune of 30. Fuck, man, if I'm 40, it's got to be 32, 33, 35 years. I don't know. Long time. Either way, long time friend, also a supporter of the show. He reached out to me a while back and was like, hey, man, love what you're doing, yada, yada. I'd love to get on. And I said, dude, I'd love to have you on. That'd be great. Chris is an expert in the financial field, man. He's been in the financial game since 2007. He became an entrepreneur, started his own business 2010, has worked in some of the biggest investment firms in the world, has been in the crypto game since basically inception, from what I understand. He's survived the Great Recession in the financial game, which is fuck, man.
It's a feat in itself.
All in and of itself, there it is. He's the co-founder and a portfolio manager of his own firm, expert in crypto and fintech world, the leader of a quant-driven diversified digital asset firm or management firm.
Words.
Whatever the fuck that means, right? We're going to find out soon. He and his partners specialize in high frequency trading, market making, algorithmic trading, technology, machine learning, alternative investments, and all that shit. And he's also, my favorite part, a steward and a protector of truth and freedom. And he wanted me to let the world know that he was a badass motherfucker, which really that's my words to describe him. But we'll have him on here just a second. In the meantime, Zach, what are we drinking today?
What are we drinking?
Yeah.
We're drinking the Osceola, Iowa Revelton Distilling Company.
So I've got a story about this. You want me to tell you real quick?
Yep, I do.
All right. This is actually a very limited release. He released, I think, 2 barrels.
So yeah, I've noticed it's handwritten here, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
what it is?
Yep. So it's handwritten.
Show the people. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's his barrel number. So that's barrel 2, whatever.
50 out of 262.
50 out of 262. Yep. I've got barrel 1, 263 out of 263 in the first barrel. He's a good friend of mine, and actually that distillery is where we are producing some of our product as we speak. So
you're tasting a little bit of potential of your product in there.
I mean, yeah,
In a long about
there's
way.
undertones. It's a different mash bill, and it's a
So there's some
slightly,
protect your purpose undertones in there.
Yeah. We've got protect your
I don't
purpose
know.
undertones.
That doesn't smell like anything I think I've ever smelled.
Yeah, it's a rye. I won't give out his
freedom,
his
Zach.
ingredients and all that.
You're
yeah,
smelling freedom.
That's right. You're smelling American grain and freedom is what you're smelling, dude. Anyway. All right. You want to get Chris in the show? Ian, can you bring Chris up? Let's get him in. Awesome. He's on. What's up, brother, man?
Dude.
How are you two?
I'm good.
My
man.
mouth's watering seeing the beautiful American bourbon there or rye whiskey. I'm
yes.
not sure. I couldn't read the label, but it looks gorgeous.
It is a rye, and you are missing out, my friend. If I had enough time, I would have packed up a little sample for you, sent it to you so you can enjoy this, because Chris is joining us, obviously, virtually and remote today. We tried to work it out to where we can get you into the studio, but schedule conflicts and busy people, just the way it is, man. Welcome to the show this way, though.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So you heard me talk about your intro. Or your bio rather, for my intro for you. Kind of against your will, as I understand, but I wanted to, number one, kind of set the tone for the show, and then immediately give you a chance to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into the industry. But my plans for the show is to have a conversation with an old friend regarding finance and freedom and all the other things that come along with it. So I'm going to let you kind of lead into what your thoughts are and how you got started in this game, man.
Yeah, it's a fairly romantic story, because my call it undergrad background was really kind of augmented because I don't know if you remember this, Matt, but remember I was in a band from like age 14
Yeah,
on,
of course
right?
I
And so
Yes.
we got, medium successful, and I ended up, Emory let me take a year off school to go on tour and like, made enough money to get by or think I was, rich in the back
Sure.
in those days. I could afford stuff. And I really didn't think I had to like look at a career, right? I thought, okay, we've put out these records, we've been on the radio, we're touring, we're, medium selling out small venues and stuff. And it's going to just catch on. And eventually it was like, oh man, we don't even have control of our own fate here because we're not going to kowtow to this shit in LA or New York. And I'm certainly not competent to write these bubblegum songs
Sure.
and just do what I'm told. Like that wasn't in any of my band's
Right.
makeup. And we're like, all right, well, shit. Now we got to better ourselves and try and, have a skill to monetize.
We got to get
outside
real
of
jobs.
Yeah, we're going to
Right.
have to get real jobs. We got to go in the finance world if we want to get rich.
Well, and it's funny, half of us are in finance, either private equity or hedge funds. Because, work ethic can lend you to where if you've got some element of staying power with your ethos personally, you can take abuse mentally, physically, which finance is all about. Like that's why the revolving door is so fast in finance. Then if you can make it, like you're going to have an opportunity to make a decent living because the value proposition of each role in private equity and hedge funds, et cetera, is a pretty big, headache and stressful. So you get rewarded for that.
Sure.
And not everybody can do it. It's just like, it's like a marathon or swimming in a triathlon, plus it's 24/7, right? Like global finance never stops. Crypto's even trades for 24/7. And you've got to like be able to adapt very fast.
Yeah.
Like there are big egos in this, but those are the types of people who are blessed.
Sure.
All the other people have to work their way into the space. Like they're not as, they don't have as easy as a path.
It's a grind. It's kind of self-filtering. That's where most of the money lies in businesses, is the ones that have a high dollar entry point, the ones that are challenging and difficult have those high turnover rates because it's only the strong survive because it's fucking hard. We just talked about it on one of our last shows about doing hard shit. If you want to be successful, you have to be able to do hard shit and weather really difficult storms. If not, everyone would be successful, and there would be no such thing as success.
Before we get too far, 2 questions. What
That's
was
it?
the name of your band?
Oh God.
And were you lead singer or were you
No,
playing
lead
instrument?
guitar player. We all sang and had harmonies as a big part of each song.
Sure.
And initially it was Stolen Rain, which is just a lame name. And then we became Sonar like senior year of high school and had I just actually gave copyrights to like a DJ who bought them from us that's out of like Netherlands or something. And we were the first band on iTunes that was unsigned. We ended up having to start our own record label to publish the music because if you wanted anybody to do distribution, you wouldn't even believe me if I told you what you would have to do or give up.
Oh, dude, I believe it.
At
Though.
one, being in Orlando, at one point we had, I won't like name them, but let's just say the management co of other boy bands and artists out of Orlando. And it just isn't the kind of thing you'd sign your life away for.
So you were a
At
boy
least-
band? Is that how you classify
No,
yourself?
that group had hands in a lot of different genres.
okay.
Because remember back in our day, guys, you had R&B, you had rap, you had hip hop, you had blues, you had rock and roll, you had punk rock, you had ska. And what they were doing is very similar to what they've done in the banking space, is destroy and consolidate
Yep.
so that
Knock down the
it all
walls.
become this propaganda campaign where there's no art in it anymore. You have to look really, really hard for the art now.
Oh, the music industry is a leader in propaganda and flipping characters and distributing information to our children. I say it all the time to my wife. My kids are a part of it, and I do my best to fight it, but at times it seems almost impossible. If you have a cell phone, which, I mean, shit, now they've made it so simple and so secure for us as parents to track our children and so convenient. Well, that cell phone also gives them access to all of the same shit that I'm fighting against and that we're fighting against and that you're fighting against, just in different industries. And now I listen to my kids listen to this same bullshit, which is pushing what? Drugs, sex, violence. I mean, it's pushing all of the propaganda.
Well, I wish it was just that.
Sure.
Because, for all intents and purposes, when you're young, drugs and sex are good. And
Sure.
everybody should go through those experiences. Like
Sure.
that's part of growing up and making mistakes. I have no problem with that, right? But I have a problem with Satan worshiping
Satan.
and
There it
communist
is.
propaganda
Mhm.
and Luciferian psyop 5D warfare, right? Like where they're injecting subliminally a message of insecurity and deconstructing one's spirit, literally, figuratively, and across all spectrums. So like as you become aware of that, and then I saw it in finance going through the financial crisis.
Mhm.
It's like, oh my God, all of these forces go upward to the same MFers for the last 300 fucking years. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I can't even help myself because it's
You're
so
on our-
upset.
You're on our show, bro. F-bombs are welcome.
Yeah.
Luckily, like a lot of the patriot movement, freedom movement is very open to non-PC
Yeah,
nomenclature.
F-bombs.
So I'm grateful, gentlemen. And it's that kind of awareness that led me to, kind of try and help those who are searching for truth and have very few outlets like y'all's to go to even second guess themselves, to start awakening. I can kind of sense there's a frequency increase of the collective subconscious that wants to level up and be more aware of facts so that people can make good decisions for themselves and their families. And without the carrying of the torch like you guys are doing, and people willing to at least share their experiences like me, how the hell is anybody going to formulate what's best for them?
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, Chris. More now than ever, at least in my lifetime, at least that I've ever been able to recognize, there is sort of an inherent nature of people wanting to kind of bridge that gap and traverse that mountain and say, hey, this is a big one, but I feel it, something, whatever it is. A lot of them can't put their finger on it, but when their kids are watching, I mean, talking about the music industry, and it's the same across so many, if not all industries, but we watched these little teeny boppers go from Disney, where they're grooming, to the winning over the hearts of these kids, and then all of a sudden, boom, they turn into Satan worshipers. They turn into lesbians. They turn into it's all the conversion into the message. And you say, how the hell did Lil Nas X go from this to a gay Satanist in a year? 365 days time, this kid who has this pop and hit. You've got Miley Cyrus. I could go on. The list goes on. It started, I think the first person I ever recognized it with was Katy Perry. And of course, the I Kissed a Girl. And I liked that she went from this bombshell, young, talented artist to boom. Next thing you know, she's flipping. And then the rap, which is what my kids listen to. They listen to this mumble rap, and it's all the same thing.
It's funny when you look at like our era, like the real rap, the gangster rap, right?
Yeah.
That is better for people to listen to than what's now.
Of course.
Like gangbanging is a more relatable, honest endeavor than what this shit is doing.
For sure. It's incredible. Who would have ever thought? I mean, my dad, Jesus, God rest his soul, my dad right now is flipping his fucking mind going, if only my kids had Wu-Tang Clan,
I know.
Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, if only.
Nas, yeah.
Right.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
Yeah.
I was just quoting Wu-Tang before we got on, the Dave Chappelle skit.
Yeah. The shit my dad thought was ruining our minds and hearts and souls is now revered and just honest, good rap. And instead, you want to talk about taking the minds and souls of kids. I oftentimes think, I don't anymore. Now I see it very clearly, but I used to think, am I just old? Am I just old?
Matt, hey, I'll walk you through the process. Like take Public Enemy, right?
Yeah.
And even the gangster rap. What was the genesis of that early 80s into early 90s, right? The genesis was rebelling against authority,
anti-authority,
and oppression,
anti-police,
and telling the story and telling the truth in a medium that could be delivered to the masses, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what did they do to it? It's the same thing as finance. They applied the over financialization model, the over commoditization model, and then the globalization model, and homogenized out the art, the experience, and the relatability. And they do that in every sector. Like as soon as you see the forest for the trees, you cannot remove that process. And it's in every segment. Now, my partners and I discuss this as with family. We are 50% to blame at least because we have allowed it to go this far. We have not bought only American products. We have not boycotted any legislation outright. We haven't protested at a degree that we should have. So we bear half the blame, but the other half is darker than you could ever imagine.
And I think that darkness, man, and I know you'll agree, you and I have talked about this several times, but we'll all agree, but for the audience, I guess, I think there, to a degree, there are people who understand it at least enough to have that urge to want to be a part of it, who understand it at least enough to want to dive deeper, but understand it also enough to know that it is dark and scary to where they just choose to bury their head in the sand and say, la, 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 if I don't hear it, it doesn't exist, and I don't want to know. Like, let me just live my life peacefully.
One more question, sorry, and then we can move on to the finance stuff.
Yeah.
But this is interesting to me because you were saying you were getting to a certain level of fame with your band, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you either sign your, like I mean this figuratively, but almost literally, sign your soul over to the devil to grow, or you're just stagnant where you're at. Because I firmly believe, and I'm sure Matt would agree, and you probably agree too, I do think in Hollywood, like you get to a certain level of fame and you either commit to the Hollywood elites or you disappear into oblivion and no one ever hears your name again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that with a question. Name a rock and roll band the last 10 years that's come out and made it on their own.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't.
Yep.
Like,
Can you?
I mean, the closest thing I would maybe like classify as that is the Zach Brown band. But
and you almost don't even know if they have or not.
No
though,
way.
You never.
There's, Go ahead. Sorry.
But like that's not even mainstream enough to really
Right.
be in that classification. Right? But I'm just giving you like who has put in the effort, who has made a living for themselves, and who commands an audience that's outside of like the network of infrastructure out of Hollywood, New York. They would be probably one of the only ones I could point to, honestly.
Sure.
Because you've had a baby resurgence of the punk and ska movement out of San Diego with the producer from, what's the band? Goldfinger, like literally investing his own money. And some of these songs are great and catchy. You're like, oh yeah, that's a great sound. Then it just gets suppressed.
Yeah.
Suppression.
Never hear
And
them.
Frank Zappa has been warned about this stuff since the early 70s. He's quoted saying, you know what, the Fat Cats of the 50s, right? And this was when you had Motown, where you had like an Italian ran mob record system and then black run mob record system, for lack of a better term. Music was better under them, according to Frank Zappa, than it ever was under the so-called liberal hippie blah 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 A&R guys. Like I'm bastardizing the quote, but if you Google that, or don't Google that, if you Brave search that, you'll find the video of him saying it, and who better to describe it than Frank Zappa, right?
Yeah.
A brilliant man, truth teller, who's testified in front of Congress and has tried to fight the very darkness that's gotten to, I think, its apex now.
Dude, speaking of truth telling, what brought us together for this show is probably best described in our common interest of telling and getting people to understand, and also getting people to be willing to speak and understand truth. And you mentioned truth telling, and obviously the finance world. Chris is a man of like many, many talents. Not only is he brilliant,
I've gathered that already.
yeah, but he was also like a badass athlete, a surfer. He's a pretty good surfer. Chris is a badass in many ways, but now, dude, what matters the most is your ability to eloquently tell the truth in a manner that is palatable, almost, if not exactly bipartisan, or nonpartisan, rather. And in a world where we need it so badly right now, and that's why it was urgent. That's why we did the virtual setup, because we knew the urgency of the financial situation, and I figured no one better to explain it than you. Tell us, I don't know, wherever you want to start, truth and finance. Give me something.
What most people know from Wall Street Journal or college, etc., is wrong. Plain and simple. Factually, mathematically, statistically, it's wrong. Like, for example, I mean, we could talk for 10 years on this. Keynesian economics, right, which approaches money from a supply side standpoint. What's wrong with that, right? No company ever, I'm going to leave the government out. No company ever is just going to create XYZ number of products because they foresee being able to sell it. No, they match demand, right? And how do you win when you're in an existing product sector? You got to make it better or cheaper. That's it. It's the only way to win market share, right?
Yep.
So there are economic theories, right? Because economics is like a freaking alchemy. It's not physics where there are laws, like matter can either be created or destroyed. Same thing with energy, can either be created or destroyed, just like matter.
Sure.
So people have been purposely misdirected with bad, wrong, and faulty information from the bottom up. Propaganda from the media and poor education from all of the university systems. There was a brief period where under Milton Friedman, University of Chicago taught closer to facts and truth, but the only truth in economic theory are the Austrians. You may be familiar with Mises or Hayek. Hayek wrote the famous book, Road to Serfdom. Their basis for, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, so their economic theory can't be fallible. Currently, it's been referenced by Ron Paul in the present day and the great Thomas Sowell out of Stanford. That to my knowledge is like the only awareness creation in the modern day of Austrian economics. So the supply side of the equation has bastardized all of the mismanagement of the government part. But the key distinction all people need to understand is two things: who controls the money supply, and then who applies the rules and regulations for that money supply. Right? Can you guys answer both of those?
No.
Private interests control all but 4 countries' money supplies. The central banking system is not a government system. The Federal Reserve is neither federal nor is it a reserve. It is not a government agency. It is immune from all laws, similar to the pharma companies with these bioweapons. And they do not answer to anyone other than their shareholders. Their shareholders happen to be the names of the families we all have learned to fear over reading of history.
Shocker.
And it's been the same control apparatus for 300 years. They are responsible for every single war, beginning with Napoleon, and will be responsible for every single war until that relationship is upended. In America, the fight for American establishment as a sovereignty has been against this one system the entire time. And then as of 1913, we've been in this cluster F. There have been 2 other occasions, one under Andrew Jackson and one under Madison, where the expiration occurred of the central bank in the United States. Big battle between Jefferson and Hamilton over this. And ever since 1913, you can see a 98% drop in purchasing power of the dollar. How did that happen? And as a result of that, the minions on the legislative side have essentially been bought and paid for and corrupted since then, to the maximum extent, where people like to say the word bipartisan. That's kind of half retarded. Sure. Because there's no, like, freedom, liberty, truth, facts do not have a partisan side. They're not a right-left issue. They are a black-white issue.
Sure. They're a truth issue. It's a truth and lie issue.
And so then you ask yourself the first question, like I did, wait a minute, is it good to have a few men and women control the entire world's money supply and interest rates?
Pretty easy answer there, bro.
Probably not yet. Giant businesses have tolerated this. It's not like I'm the only one that knows this. Millions of people know this. And they are operating within this system as if it's okay. And tangentially, that allows for stuff like the Bud Light stuff, and then the Hollywood stuff and the music stuff. All of that is a byproduct of the bastardization of money. It is the root of all of mankind's evil.
The root of all mankind's evil.
Yeah, I mean, I could quote Jesus like through many different gospels. Like, that is the problem with humanity.
That is evil.
So what would the alternative be? Like, what can an average citizen do, or what? I mean, like, how will that ever change?
Damn it! You asked the question too soon.
Oh, sorry.
Damn it, Zach.
Yeah,
I just didn't want to lose it.
You inquisitive mind.
I didn't want to lose it.
Go ahead. Let's get into that.
like anything, like awareness is the first level. Like
Understanding,
because
yeah.
Mark Twain. It's easier to convince somebody of a lie than they've been lied to, right? Like that's a fact, and most people need to jump across to realize they've been lied to the entire time about almost everything in their entire life, right? So once you can accept that, then you can go, okay, maybe it's a good idea that I contact my representative, and then maybe it's a good idea that I have asset protection outside of this system. Oh, and maybe it's a good idea that I support local businesses that are on Bitcoin, for example. Oh, maybe it's a good idea that I don't support businesses that are against me, right? Like it all starts there. But make no mistake, this is a battle. Like right now, like what we've seen with the closure of banks, the seizing of accounts, whether it's the truckers here in America or Canadian truckers, or it's the Gen 6 people in jail for nothing, or it's Donald Trump getting it, all of it's the same freaking problem.
It's the same thing, man. It's the same song, different dance.
Right. Exactly.
That's exactly right. This is why I wanted to have you on, man. You do such a great job, and you're so much more articulate than I am. I usually just say like 17 F-bombs, express my fucking anger and my frustration with the system, knowing that I understand it. But the hardest thing, and this is what I try to explain to people, the hardest thing about this system is to understand and articulate, which is why so few people, relatively speaking, fully understand it. And people are like, well, because it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to not make sense because you're fed, and we have mass $1 trillion global distributions of information to fucking confuse people, to keep them on tilt, to help them not understand something that otherwise is pretty easy to understand. Like, hey, a few people control this and they don't exactly have our best interest in mind. Pretty simple concept.
I mean, it's not like I can relate it to food, right? Almost everybody with a pulse recognizes that we have been strategically poisoned and malnutrition over the last 50 years on purpose.
Unarguably.
Right? Unarguably.
Well, hold on.
So why would that not be the same case in money?
Chris, here's what I have a theory on this. So, and you can probably, well, either way, you'll shed some light on it. You may or may not agree, but if you disagree, do tell. I believe that people do understand. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I've got an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, right? Or no, I'm sorry, a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old now. For years, I've been referring to food as poison. I now have a 4-year-old. She's 4. She barely wipes her own ass. And she looks at food and says, Daddy, is this poison? Like a 4-year-old can fully comprehend what the word poison means. My kids understand what the definition of the word poison is, and they very well understand that we are being handed food in our schools that are poison to their body. It will cause them harm. It will make them sick. And over time, it will make them dead. My children understand this. Here's what I think, and my theory is. The difference is that people do not believe, even though they believe and understand the concept, that the food is poison. It's common knowledge amongst all, like you said, all people with a brain and a pulse understand that. What they fail to understand is that it was done knowingly and intentionally.
How could it be done any other way?
Well, that's where they just have the blinders on. How could it be done any other way? And what was it done? And then they go in and they're like, oh, it's just for the money. Well, partly.
You can, first off, it's hard to fathom that it has nothing to do with being about the money. Like we've been conditioned to follow the money.
Sure.
You think the people with 300 trillion or 20 trillion of net worth that you've never heard of, but their bloodlines are 100 generations old, do you think they give two F's about money? They're the people who can conjure it.
They print it, bro.
Yeah. They don't care about money.
That's right.
So
what
are
is
they
it?
trying to extract all of the labor and control all the assets as a part of that process? Absolutely. But that's not about profit. That's about control. All of it's about control. Mm-hmm. And that the whole FUD you're seeing against the digital asset space is all about that. Like and anybody with a pulse should go, wait a minute, if 99% of what I'm reading about Bitcoin from the mass media is negative, it's probably the opposite is true. Like that should be everybody's gut instinct, because how could they come out something so hard that all it does is threaten one aspect of what control they have, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's obvious. And I think people's will for ignorance now is maybe higher because of the mass formation psychosis caused by the pandemic, the natural Stockholm syndrome that occurs when you are beginning your awakening process. Like, 6-10 years ago, when I fully became aware, like it was depressing, going, oh my God, I want to crawl in a hole, or I want to kill everyone. Like you go back and forth with those extremes, but then you realize, like, our forefathers in the United States knew they were fighting this MFing evil, have written about what it would like. It's a republic if you can keep it. Ben Franklin, right? That has been true and truer and truer. Andrew Jackson, what he's saying, I got those damn banks. He called them a den of vipers. This is not conjecture. And I would rather align myself with those men than any other segment of the human population in the history of our population.
It's because they were men.
And they stood up where no one else had stood up.
They were
and
revered.
Succeeded.
That's right. They stood up where no one would stand up. They stood in the face of courage and adversity and persecution when no one else would, because they were fucking men's men. And they gave a shit about us today and not all the other bullshit, man. It's hard to find people like that anymore, man. And it's disheartening. It's discouraging. It's frustrating that I'm deathly afraid. And again, we've talked extensively on this. I'm afraid for my children's future, man.
I echo that. And it's unfortunate because you served your country. All of our bloodlines that have been convinced to fight these proxy wars for bankers, like Smedley Butler, no wars but bankers wars, right? Mm. They killed Patton when he found out that we fought the wrong enemy in World War II. They executed anybody who was outside of the control apparatus. And then now you look at Milley and the like, and the military's so cucked out, they would probably fire on their own citizens before realizing that, wait a minute, who do we actually work for and what are we here to do? Right? Like this is this is so masterfully put together that we can't even count on our poisoned, malnutritioned, overweight, untrained force to help us in this situation. Like obviously there are patriots in there that
Chris
can, but
not to mention, I called it the Patriot Purge. I've heard, since I said that, I swear to God, I was the first one to fucking say that. But since then, people have obviously taken it on. But I was a part of it. There was a purge through the COVID vaccination process. It was one of many. Then there's always, every time there's a Democrat in office, they do sort of a sequester where they push out people. It's a systematic and covert downsize in the armed forces. And this one was no different, but 100% different. This one, where they basically did an information gathering session, okay, where they forced the COVID vaccination. They polarized the topic. They made it to where patriots, they put something in front of us that patriots, and I was one of these, one of very few who took a stand for the purpose of taking a stand. There were many who took a stand and said, you know what, separate me then. I'm going to leave peacefully and quietly. And then there was people like me who said, fuck you and your information gathering exercise that I know that you're doing right now, where they forced us. They forced us into, you either take the COVID vaccine with no data, and the data that we did have was adverse effect shit, was shit that anyone with a brain would have seen, oh shit, maybe I better just hold off on this. Well, they immediately started full court pressing it. And what they said is, you need to take one of three routes. You are either a medical exemption request. I'm saying request because 0 were fucking approved and 0 stuck and 0 fucking mattered when the dust settled. But you were either a medical exemption request, where you were forced to put your official position in writing. From a medical standpoint, you were a religious exemption request. Again, 0 were approved and 0 matter today. And you put your official on a memorandum for record, your official religious position and what your position is on why you're declining it, or you are, and this is where I fell, a straight refusal. And as of April 9th, I'm officially out of the United States Armed Forces after 22 years and no retirement eligibility because of this persecution and bullshit that I faced. Listen, I'm happy to do it. I don't want any pity for me. I know we won that battle as much as we could have won that battle because of people like me that took a stand in one way or another. But ultimately, here's what they did. They purged out retirements, forced retirements, and unforced retirements at an all-time high. U.S. Army, U.S. military history. People basically said, I'm not doing any of this, and I'm retirement eligible. You can kiss my ass and pound sand with your stupid memorandums. I'm out. Just retirement paperwork. Retention levels drop where they said, hey, I'm up for re-enlistment. Nope, I'm not doing this shit. Why? Because I got 18 months left. They can either kick me out or I'll ETS and get out voluntarily. No problem. I'm not doing this. The people that, like me, that took a stand for sheer principle and saying, no, I'm not going to give you my official position. Why? Because I've got, and it was a list. I had 52 questions that I had from my punishment interview where they started the adverse action, where I had 52 questions, of which 47 remained completely unanswered, where my commander said, I have no idea what the answer to that is. I'm going to have to punt. 3 of which were, 3 of those were answered, but with a question mark after them. I'm going to have to go double check on this. I'm not real sure of the answer, but basically 0 questions answered where I said, okay. And 2, I think were just the commander's discretion where he said, I'd probably do this. Meanwhile, what happened throughout this whole process? The media was telling everyone that there was 3,000 some odd hundred troops that were protesting or that were unvaccinated, blah, blah, blah. What they failed to mention was that we have an IRR, the Individual Ready Reserve. Is that what it stands for?
Yes, sir.
Individual Ready Reserves. And this is where it's kind of like this purgatory where you go in between actual separation and an active status. It's where they say, hey, it's more cost effective for us to try and get you through a retention position to try and re-enlist and come back in. So they let you sit there from anywhere.
Yeah, it's like a list. If they need people, they can call you randomly and deploy.
Yeah,
you.
Pre-draft, that's where they would go. Financially, it's beneficial. Anyhow, this number of these troops increased. Fuck, I don't know the percentage. I'd be lying if I did, but a lot. And anyway, they end up right before I ended up getting the hammer brought to me. I end up on the phone with a major from the Human Resources Command who says, oh yeah, the number is 43,000 troops in the IRR, in the United States Army, just the Army alone. 43,000 troops, of which, get this, over 40,000 are out of compliance for vaccination status. That's 100% of the troops in that entire component of the armed forces.
40,000.
Right. So ultimately,
But they're not advertising those numbers.
Of course not. It was a lie. It was all a lie. Right. But anyway, back to the point here. I'm off my soapbox here.
Well, hold on. Finish your point, because this is going to make a humongous relevant point to right now.
Yeah, I think so. I can't wait to hear what you say. So what I was getting to was when you mentioned who's going to do it. When we talk about our armed forces, I mean, the 40,000, I don't know the exact number, 500,000, 40,000 soldiers exited in protest. They were forced to do something they didn't. Those are the people who didn't cave. I know of dozens, personally, hundreds through way of network. Shit, you're looking at one. I hate to bring it up, but Zach was forced into it. When you put 20 years on the line and say, hey man, you're either going to lose your retirement, we're going to separate you, or you get this jab, you get stuck. Zach says, well, fuck, man. I mean, they're forcing me. I can't afford to not do it. What am I going to do? We sit there and say, man, we've been in the Army 20 years. I tell everyone, Dude, I had a 4 series anthrax shot. There isn't shit that hasn't been jabbed in my body. Like any test drug they had, they stuck it in me along the way.
Yeah, but this is the first gene editing one.
Bingo. So anyway, the point was that I was trying to get to was that they did a purge. They purged us out.
Guess what?
Tell me.
As a result of that purge, China agrees with you, Russia agrees with you, Brazil agrees with you, India agrees with you, South Africa agrees with you, Turkey agrees with you, Egypt agrees with you, Saudi Arabia agrees with you, Syria agrees with you, Iran agrees with you. And you know what that disrupts? The thing that can hurt U.S. citizens the absolute most, that they are clueless on for the most part, which is that since the dollar has been world reserve currency post Bretton Woods, post World War II, and post petrodollar, 1971, we have enjoyed a existence and wealth unparalleled across the planet. And already, as a result of that, 34% of commodities are settling in Chinese yuan. And why is that the case? Because how did we maintain reserve status? In 2 ways. First, the point of a gun from our military, and second, the point of a gun from the informed citizenry who are well armed. It is only those 2 things that has kept that reserve status, and the rest of the world sees what's been done to us and goes, oh, well, we have no threat of doing it, so we're switching to our currency. Meanwhile, you idiots have printed God knows how much. You're sending unfathomable amounts of money to Ukraine to fight yet another neocon Zionist war in fucking Ukraine, and no one's accounting for anything. And if you look at all of the proxies, they're all in part of this agenda of one world order, central bankery, and control everybody, right? They always fund and play both sides. And there's always a collusion or a, backdoor hedge that they have going on. And we know that China is definitely the model of the World Economic Forum's economic model moving forward. So full on expect that this is just another avenue to undermine the U.S. population. But what's also the case is that the autonomy that a lot of these countries have outside of this, including Saudi Arabia, is at the highest level ever. So if there was ever a chance for a king like Xi to say, you know what? Sorry, guys, I'm not listening to you psychopaths anymore. I'm not saying it's probable or it happens, but there's a chance that that's actually occurring right now.
Better chance now than ever.
Like, if you're going to tell me that I've got to believe that China and Russia citizenry is my enemy right now, I'm going to laugh you out of the room.
Right.
We have no problem with those human beings over there. And in fact, I have a huge problem with buying products from slave labor countries.
Sure.
And a huge problem that our Federal Reserve stole 300 billion plus of the Russian depositor money from the central bank over there. That wasn't Putin's money. That was regular folks like us money. How could our government and then central bank have the technological ability to just do that? Like, there's nobody worried about that? Everybody's okay with this? Come on. And then you look at the backdrop of what we've done to Iraq, Syria, et al., where we've just destroyed those countries in the name of putting in a central bank, i.e. Libya being a really good example too. No wonder those people hate us. Like, they don't realize that us collectively aren't down with all of those decisions.
Right.
You know?
Oh, the shit, man. I was in Canada not long ago, a couple weeks ago. We fly into an airport. There's a young lady at the desk. And long story short, we end up kicking it there at the airport and just chat. I was just chatting it up with her. And she basically, from Calgary, right over the border. She'd been there for 13 or 14 years. Forget where her mom moved, Jamaica maybe. Anyhow, she told me I've never been to the United States. Knew all about it. I said, oh, you've never been to the United States? She's been all over.
She knew the separation of U.S. Inc. Co.
Yep. She knew exactly what it was and told me, I'm not going there. And I said, why? She said, because I'm not going to be a part of any of that. And I'm going, hold on a second. Like, this girl.
Explain it.
Well, I was just going to say, this girl is completely mind fucked with America and wants nothing to do with it because she thinks she understands what's happening. And she has now viewed us as weak, almost the devil, and to be ignored. She has no desire to ever go to America. She has no, I don't know if her state of mind was right on that, but her position was, I have no desire to go there.
I've looked at this because we have an international business.
Sure.
And I mean, Florida's probably the safest place on earth right this second, but that's not going to stand forever if we don't have a good governor and good population like we have now. But there's nowhere to run to, right? Like America has been that bastion of freedom in a multi-ethnic but culturally centric environment. And the so-called divide and conquer through bread and circuses and illusion of difficulties, which you could wrap everything from the trans thing to the racial thing. That's all fake, all designed to move our attention away from the actual issues. Like this country is the land of all immigrants to come, but under the umbrella of freedom, liberty, and essentially do unto others as you would have done to yourself. Like, don't create a victim. Do whatever you want to do. Just don't create a victim. That's literally what our rule of law and the Constitution says. And it also obligates us under tyrannical, authoritarian dictatorships to rebel. There's that obligation in there to rebel against that.
People don't understand that either, Chris.
No.
Well, then you deserve what Bill Gates has served you.
Yeah.
I mean, I have empathy and sympathy to a degree, but I also just like I do quantitatively, I want all of the objective evidence to be able to argue one side to make a bet this direction. Then I want all the evidence objectively and quantitatively to make it this direction. And then somewhere in the middle is the right move, right?
Yeah.
So I can see the side of the quote unquote controllers going, look, we can't just support these useless eaters, as they call us, forever. And we got to cull them somehow. I mean, when you look at it from their point of view, you can't really argue against it because, 55% of the country is obese. Everybody's an idiot. I mean, again, it's 50-50. 50% their fault for doing it to everybody, and 50% for people for letting it be done to them.
We just say, okay, we comply. Senselessly, mindlessly, thoughtlessly, comply.
Zach, no offense. You weren't forced to do that.
Right. No, you're right. 100%.
You cucked out and didn't do what you knew to be in your best interest. And now, I don't know if you have children or not, but you probably shouldn't until you detox every living cell in your body.
Luckily, I had those before. Yeah.
Good. Because what we can't even fathom the danger of this shit yet. It's only now, there's nanoparticles and this, that, and they're hydrogel and blah, blah, blah. But you can't do gene editing therapy and think that that's good. Even if the intentions weren't what we know them to be.
Yeah, even if they weren't. And that's, there's a couple, right back to what we kind of said earlier. People don't understand the difference between intentional behaviors and accidental behaviors. I think people are at this point at best, ignoring or failing to realize that these behaviors are intentional. And at worst, they're not even understanding that they're damaging to us in our future. But somewhere in the middle lies I think probably the majority of people where they know that it's damaging. They know that shit's going wrong. They just don't understand what their role and what their obligations are. And we need to use our voices, use our freedoms, as long as we still fucking have them, to tell people, hey, you've got to make a change. You have an obligation. I think that's a great point that you brought up. We as Americans have an obligation to stand up for our freedoms. If we don't fucking stand up for them, no one else will. Everyone else is trying to fucking take them.
I cannot tolerate this we deserve thing from society. I deserve this and we deserve that and da 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 da. It's just this mental entrapment of victimhood. And no one deserves anything other than the rule of law as their jurisdiction applies it to them. That's what we deserve, is due process under those laws. What those laws are then a product of a lot of different things that have gone wrong over American history. But it's not like we don't have the best reference point ever in history, right? We have the single greatest document, and forgive me, religious folks,
Yeah.
the Constitution goes way above any religious document. It
Sure.
supersedes that of anything, in my opinion. And then second would be the Magna Carta, because nowhere in those religious texts does it ever say man has the ability to have natural rights endowed in his spirit and soul. It does not articulate that the way the Declaration of Independence does, right? And these guys were deists, but they weren't religious, right? And I very much respect where the Calvinistic and then Lockean approach to this was applied to the best I've seen in history. And people literally should just reference that. Just go read it. And if it doesn't move you to wake up and do what you can process and think is right for your family, then society doesn't owe you its assistance as everything continues to break down. And then as far as finance is concerned, the moment to protect yourself is within 90 days of ending. On May 3rd, FedNow is rolled out.
Tell me about it.
Somewhere July through the end of the year, the CBDCs will be rolled out. Why do you think all of a sudden we are having another banking crisis?
I had a very short list of things that I wanted to talk to you about. I knew this conversation would be impactful, and as you know, we have a sort of a mission to provide as much value. We figured from a show standpoint, if we can provide as much value to as much of the population as humanly possible, relevant value that they can truly take and apply to themselves and their lives to make themselves better, that we would succeed as a show, as long as it wasn't too much truth, and as long as at some point somebody didn't start to stand on our head, which was almost immediately. The FedNow was basically one of two things that I wanted to get your opinion on. So tell us all about it.
I think people need to understand what the banking system actually is, right? To really grasp the severity and the brevity of the issue at hand. Our money in the bank is not ours. You are actually creating a security when you're making a deposit. You are an unsecured creditor to that bank. They have every legal ability to do whatever they want. From if you have a mortgage, they can go claim your house, regardless of whether it's underwater or not. If you have a credit card, they can pull all your money to pay the credit card off. If you have ACH of any of your bills, they could do that instantly. If you don't notice, I'm listing steps to flip switches off, by the way.
Yeah.
They can make you cashless, which is insane. Like in Europe, they're banning cash transactions above $1,000. Like all of these things, people, at least in my opinion, Americans don't want to believe and don't want to act on, because it is inconvenient. It's inconvenient to prepare and hedge yourself.
Of course.
It's inconvenient to recognize and stomach the severity of what you should do. Even if you're wrong, like the best thing in the world about hedging and protecting yourself is like, great, you only did XYZ time and money preparing. If you're wrong, awesome. Because if you're right, this isn't going to offset all of this.
Yeah, it's great.
It's just going to allow you to maybe continue to help your family. So when you see that, whether it's a panic in 1907, 1929, 1933, they literally made gold illegal. What do you think that they can do now to you? Like it's unfathomable, the weaponization that can occur. Even I can't even fathom it. And so first, it's comprehend that everything that you use for financial transactions, unless you're totally decentralized on one of these bad boys, which means you're your own sovereign and you're your own bank, then you better get your act together now. And I'm not the only one willing to warn people on this. This is pragmatic, and people like Harry Dent and Porter Stansberry and Peter Schiff, they have been warning about this for Ron Paul, 40 years, right? Now it's every problem that they were listing all combined into one, with the literal most incompetent people in positions to execute these plans. So it's like the most crazy cluster F we could ever imagine, like FUBAR, to use a military term. What you have to understand about the banking system is it's already been bankrupt. It's been bankrupt for 50 effing years. It's been at least bankrupt since the 70s.
Sure.
At least.
Debt.
Q quantitative easing, right? You're doing that in part as an admission of it being bankrupt, right?
Of course.
And conjuring new money is what leads to inflation. The literal definition of inflation is increase in money supply, right?
Yeah, of course.
Not the cost of stuff going up. That's a byproduct.
No. Increase the money supply without increasing the goods to match the money supply. Pretty simple.
Period.
Right? Increase the
and
supply
it's not
of money,
by chance that
no increase in the demand. Boom.
and then in the face of that, you're dealing with like 5D chess and psyop warfare, right? So, okay, if you don't understand what the Fed discount window is, you don't understand what reverse repo market is, you don't understand what the euro dollar market system is, that's all fine. And you don't need to tackle all of that. But the main premise is your money isn't there. Okay, what do I do?
Yes.
Now,
What do we do?
I think it's prudent for everybody to have 5% in gold and silver.
So what you
Sure.
just held up was like it's like a thumb drive. It's called a ledger of some point. What is it? A ledger nano. Where what that is, and you can explain it more. It's basically a thumb drive, a USB drive plugs into your computer. It stores your cryptocurrency on it to where it can't be touched by anybody that doesn't have that possession and a heavily encrypted password, right? And you could probably do a much better job explaining that than I just did. But for our listeners are not the type of listeners that understand all that shit you just mentioned, to include myself.
Well, do you think I did before I tried? I mean,
Well,
you
no.
can't just magically know stuff without doing it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
So that ledger is a way to store cryptocurrency, basically to where it's untouchable. I didn't hear I don't remember what you said. You said you're your own bank,
you're your own sovereign, and
your
you're
own sovereign, and your own bank, and that
Now,
right
with
there allows you to.
With self-sovereignty comes responsibility, right?
Sure.
Like private keys, you have to be responsible with this stuff, just like you would a gun and just like you would gold or silver coins, right?
Mhm.
And that's why they're so valuable, because they come with this inherent responsibility, right? And I can't tell anybody what like the perfect percentage of distribution is, right? But I can tell what I would call prudent man rule. And if you approach investing from not what I can get, like it's the same thing if I deserve,
Yeah,
but
what
you
can I
approach it
preserve?
from what are like the core tenets of investing, what's the purpose, and then what can I apply under 4 or 5 disciplines that I know I can execute without blowing myself up? Because you are the risk to yourself, right? There's no exterior risk that you can't be conscious of, calculate, and not be an idiot with,
Sure.
right? And you can't win all the time. So when you stomach that and you don't anchor to a figment of imagination, every investor that I've ever met, for the most part, anchors to this, we call it NAV, net asset value, of whatever they think their total net worth is in a number, right? That number's fake. First off, the denominator measuring that is completely fake.
Yeah.
Like, let's just agree there.
Yep.
And then your emotional tagging to it has been conditioned into you.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Bread.
that's why efficient market theory is wrong. If the market priced in everything that was knowable at once and was efficient about that, why would it would never go up or down? It would just go equilibrium. So everything has been taught as like a bread and circuses manipulation. So that investors feel like, oh, my portfolio was 7, SP was 10. I missed out. I got to change stuff, right? When if you are 100% at risk, maybe you do what the S&P does. But if you're hedging at all, should you perform with the S&P? No, because hedges do what? They cost money.
Sure.
So
You're paying
like
for
people don't walk themselves through any sort of discipline with the structure. And then they use half-wits, right? The problem with that most investors are faced with is you got your local CFP who's possibly, a 70 IQ. And then you've got your bank financial advisors, which are company men and women and possibly aren't even a 70 IQ,
Sure.
and then limited just selling you products that they have access to, right? For God knows what fees, because they'll never show it to you. So like this is a difficult thing to do as an investor, but you've got to go through all of that before putting your money at risk. And then, let me trade YOLO options on Robinhood. And then wait, they can turn you off. I mean, I can't, like, my sympathy only goes so far. So if we understand all that, and that it's us and our families alone against the world, but hopefully with a few good hedge fund managers like myself and advisors amongst anything, or life coaches, then you could face it with strength. And then when you face it with strength, you just lower your probability of blowing up yourself, right? Like, don't use leverage. Don't carry debt if it's not tax advantaged. Don't ignore classic asset diversification and strategy diversification so that you have 4 things winning when 3 things lose, or 3 things winning when 4 things lose. Like, that's the game to stay in.
I've got a question. So for trying to provide some value to, I mean, our average listener, I mean, just we're talking average Joe. Most people, I mean, statistically, most people are not high net worth individuals. Okay. So let's talk about the people from, $10,000 to $100,000 net worth individuals, people who may have, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 of the current equity in their home, or, $10,000 in the bank account, maybe $5,000 or $1,000 in the bank account. What would your advice to those individuals be today to best position themselves for what you believe is to come?
I have to give a disclaimer for
Let's
compliance.
go. Yep.
I'm a hedge fund portfolio manager, not a financial advisor.
Got it.
So everything I say here is what I would do if I were in that position.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You ought to have an ABC number of months of your bills in cash.
Okay.
Right? You should have $1,000 of gold and silver in coins so that you could transact at a local farmer's market. You should have $1,000 or $2,000 worth of Bitcoin on a ledger, right? You should minimize the access, if you can, to bill pay and credit card, and for the apparatus to come take what you do have out of whatever checking or checking accounts you have, right? And then probably at this point have nothing at risk in the public markets.
No public markets.
Again, not financial advice, but just
Sure.
my opinion, because at a bare minimum, they're 50% currency derivatives. Is it probable that we QE again and markets could have like some weird melt up for 6 months? Sure, because that would actually be the most bearish thing to actually happen.
Sure.
So would there be missing out of potential upside in the next 6 months? Sure. But that's phantom anyways, right? Like, what we're dealing with over the next 2 to 10 years is a much more severe thing than people could ever imagine. So what can you do to put yourself in a position to make that process at least offset a little bit? And I think those are really the only ways somebody with kind of 10 to 100K of liquidity could move. And having stuff at risk where in 10 seconds it's gone, whether it's the brokerage firm that goes out of business, the advisor you're using loses his or her job, or there's like so many things that could go wrong in that equation, that what are you missing out on?
Yeah.
The last gasp of 20 or 30% that you have to top tick and then remove your money out of the system anyways. And maybe you mistime that. Nobody actually captures that. Like, it's just risk reward, right? As an investor, you always want to put yourself in a positively convex position. That means for every 1 increment of risk, I've got 2 increments of reward.
Sure.
Right. In this scenario, as far as I can see, and I've been wrong before, that is inverted, where we have infinitely more unknown unknowns, right? I'm giving you known unknowns that are risk, but if it's as bad as what I'm describing it is, imagine how bad it actually is.
Right.
So I just don't see in someone like in that position of having what I have. I have placeholder assets in the equity market.
What does
right?
that mean?
That I just assume is going to lose 50%, but that's not going to do shit to me other than remind me to buy more.
Sure.
Right. Which is why I have them.
Sure.
So, and if it goes to 0, which is possible, okay, big deal.
Whatever. Yeah.
Like, you can't win everything, and everything has to be positioned as such so that one huge pivot point or the other, or pendulum swing, doesn't destroy everything you've worked hard to build.
Tell me this, man. I asked you tell me about FedNow.
Most folks don't understand how transactions work, how many middlemen and women are in between them, what is the duration, and when my money's in wherever, what happens, right? So
Right.
let's pick on Visa here, for example, even though they've invested quite a bit in crypto. Every credit card, but for all intents and purposes, for this example, let's use Visa. You use it, and then how many days until that transaction's settled?
Couple days, 3 days.
I'm gonna say a week.
It does depend. It can be as little as 2.5, 3, and up to about 10.
Because it does.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It does sit in that pending.
And why does it do
position for
that?
a while.
Tell us.
I'm hoping
Why?
you're telling us because I have
Well,
zero fucking
shouldn't-
idea.
do you use a credit card? Shouldn't you freaking know this?
You're
Sure.
right.
Like-
You're right.
Right? Like
Mhm.
this should be something everybody asks themselves. All right. So what's happening is the vendor who sold you the good or service pays the credit card company, who then pays the respondent banks, one for the apparatus for the vendor and one for the credit card company. There is an FX swap, which means a currency swap. There is an overnight lending. And in between there, somehow there's a net cost of 2.5 to 4.5% for that vendor and you as user to transact.
Yep.
So there is a time lag. There is a fulfillment of order lag in terms of money from here to there. And there's all kinds of little thieving going on just for providing a pipe.
Everybody's
Right?
getting their little piece of the pie.
That should be rebelled against. We call it usury, right? That
Okay.
should have been rebelled against.
Just to your
for the-
point, there's like small businesses that cash only or whatever, and most people walk in there and be like, "Oh, Jesus fucking Christ, I gotta go to the ATM get cat." But really, we should be supporting
Only
those,
using cash.
only
Yeah.
using
Fuck
those.
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Or God forbid, Bitcoin. 25 million transactions per second on the Lightning Network for a net cost of 0.0002.
Mm.
Peer-to-peer instant settlement gets the business money faster for cheaper, gets you the settlement transparent and locked on chain. Like everybody wins.
No
Everybody
way.
wins.
No way they're letting this happen.
That's a horse of a different color. So FedNow, FedNow essentially is the wholesale channels. So that currently what's going on, even though it's discombobulated and it's full of middlemen, at least it's by choice between respondent bank, the credit card you use, the credit cards that the business accepts, yada, yada, yada. Guess what happens under this?
Hmm.
There's none of the above.
Right.
It is the overlords of the earth versus everybody else. And so when I say wholesale, what I mean is it's replacing SWIFT, which is the interbank transaction for wires platform. It's a DOS-based system, for lack of a better word. And it is currently used by almost every bank that has any sort of USD denominated business. Offshore, those are called euro dollar deposit markets. Onshore, they're USD deposit markets. So it's replacing the existing infrastructure for a transaction layer,
Yep.
both interbank and for commerce. That obviously they have to imprint onto the system as they consolidate all of the banking to just very few banks. And then once that process is complete, then you get your CBDC, which is central bank digital currency. So if you thought it was bad that they could just print money in both paper form or conjure it the way they do it now, is they just go, "Hey, Mr. Marchese, would you like 17 trillion in your checking account on JP Morgan today?" D, done. That's how they do it now. That's how effing insane and ridiculous it is.
I mean,
Why are there poor people? Why do we pay tax? So anywho, the degree of manipulation control will then be tied to a like a smart contract, right? This will be a cryptocurrency with one node, just like it is now. There's one node issuer in terms of central banks, and it will tie your universal basic income or your ability to spend your own money to all of the social credit score. And it's going to be all this fake ESG stuff and fake woke BS that they're going to sell to you for your safety and inclusivity, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, the moment that's able to be turned on is like, all right, you guys have, let's say 100K at Bank of America.
Yep.
Fuck you, Balin, you
Sorry.
have 3,000 of our new CBDC because you did this, that, or other, and you don't have it.
Oh, I'm
And then-
fucked, bro.
You want to buy 1 pound of extra red meat? Nope, you cannot. And then, oh, you tried minus, which is what they're already doing it in China. Like,
Of course.
so, I mean, welcome to Beyond Mad Max. This is a indisputable fact. Biden signed an executive order. Literally, you probably can't Google it since that's disrupted.
Yeah.
It's called Biden Bucks. And FedNow is the wholesale channel to then roll out the retail channel of the CBDC system.
How long do you think before this takes place?
I mean, prediction. Well, so May 3rd is FedNow.
Right.
That's
Their initial rollout, though. That's not the full blown social credit score
Well,
system.
they can't
That's not.
shock the system.
Yeah, that's not the retail aspect of it. I mean, that's the initial rollout.
I
Where
personally would believe it would take 2 years.
they're
but-
trying to get this in before the next election.
If they crash the stock markets and they crash the regional banks so that it's just forced up quickly, their ability to do it faster is greatly enhanced. So
Significant.
I don't like predictions because people are idiots that make predictions. It's for me, it's a game of probability, right?
Yep.
If these steps are taken, the logical next one would be this, the illogical next one would be that, and somewhere in the middle is what the actual occurrence is.
Yep.
And I'm continually having to update my psychology and analysis of this because it's so much worse than I ever thought.
So in like
Mhm.
Barney level explanation, essentially they can control if you owe money to someone, gone. You don't pay it yourself, they'll just take it from you. Or if you're going to purchase something they don't believe you should be purchasing, denied, not happening. Guns, for example. They can stop you from purchasing and they can take your money for whatever reasons they see fit.
What people are not recognizing from this system, in my opinion, is that you might be noticing a destruction of all the food processing plants. You might be noticing a destruction of all agricultural land in the United States. You
Shock.
might be noticing a destruction of all the supply chains. You may be noticing a destruction of the so-called chickens because of so-called bird flu or the mRNA vaccines going into livestock. I wonder why they want to do that simultaneously with this.
I can tell you one thing: our fucking listeners are noticing that
He who controls the food controls
the
the
population.
world. He who controls the weather controls the world. That's a direct quote from Johnson, by the way. So you might want to look up at the various poison that's sprayed over our heads every day. And it's because they've achieved so many of the apparatus of society in terms of the control channels, the manipulation, et cetera, that they're able to then roll this out. And those in the know, like, we feel like they're just middle fingering us to go, ha, 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 you guys haven't won anything. You can't fight us. And if we don't, I'm at least going to try to wake up as many people as possible for no other reason than I can be martyred happily.
Yeah.
Right? Or because my family is not going to participate in this. We will resist and do the best we can to survive without it.
Same. This is such a fear mongering, such a sensitive, difficult conversation to have amongst what I view as, I mean, otherwise normal people. Like, I don't want to fucking talk about this. I had a buddy of mine this morning. Well, it's Friday morning here, but early this morning text me and said, "Hey man, I appreciate what you're doing with your content." I said, "Full disclosure, Ian produces most of the content. You know, I just show up on podcast day and I record." And he was like, no, I'm talking about the content you are putting out. It is raw. It is serious. It is what we need to hear. And it is everything that I think of when I think about protecting our purpose. And I said, dude, you'd be surprised how difficult it is for us to put this out and how difficult it is for us to have these conversations, because honestly, man, we're just normal fucking people. Like, I don't want to talk about this. I said it recently on a different show. All I want to do is worry about growing my business and celebrating my family and successes and growing big shit and creating wealth and helping people do the same and helping, younger generations rise up and grow and become leaders. And all I want to do is like the awesome shit that we're doing and celebrate that. But instead, I'm trapped in this world of knowing what's going on and questioning everything. And I think just normal people have a really hard time with that concept. Like, hey man, this shit could get bad. And I think it's time that we all just start speaking truth, having conversations like this. You said it earlier in the show. Maybe we're wrong. That's what I tell all my rich, successful business owner friends. Like, hey, if I'm wrong, number one, fucking awesome. I hope I'm wrong. Number two, if I'm wrong and you do what I'm telling you and what Chris is telling you and what we're telling you to do, you're only bettering yourself. Like, there's nothing bad that can come away from you acting as if I am right, but only bad can come if I'm wrong.
There's no probability of you being wrong.
Zero. Chris.
Almost zero. You can't, there's no 100% or
Sure.
zero, right? But
99.9.
those who know history know that this has been a plan of a few thousand people for hundreds of years, most specifically the last 40 years, more specifically the last 7 to 10, and then through to 2030, literally called
Agenda 2030, of course.
It literally written in Great Reset. So you've now got these factions that used to be divided, where you had Skull and Bones, Illuminati, Jesuits, Buddhists, which now you know what the Dalai Lama is really doing. Like, I mean, people are really, really not wanting to believe
Of course.
that these so-called secret societies or cabals, it's one cabal. It's one. There's no this illusion of the Bilderberg Group or the Council of Foreign Relations or even the UN and NATO, which, wait a minute, it's a supranational group that can govern us unelected? Does anybody have a problem with this?
We're seeing it every day. Unelected people making laws and rules and guidelines and regulations that we have to follow or else we face punishment. And nobody
no one's
granted you
challenging.
fucking power. No one's challenging it.
And like, clearly our existing political apparatus has failed us from every possible avenue and side. Everyone, I'm going to hold my tongue, should be kicked out of their current positions and replaced. And I think they should be held accountable for treason.
Most of them.
99% of them.
Yep. I know a couple. I know a couple what I believe to be good ones who and
But they're still complicit. Like, first off, if they have not fought the chemtrail thing that's been going on since the 50s, all of them know it. There's countless petitions over and over and over again from every group I've ever talked to, and we're being sprayed constantly with poison, partly to manipulate the weather, which, if you want to deny this, China creates blizzards. Saudi Arabia creates blizzard. They've been manipulating weather. Go to
say it out loud.
Vietnam. That stuff, we like bragged about what we did in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I forget the operation name. You might remember it. Not Paperclip. That was Nazi. Even that, they brought the Nazis over to build the bomb. Like, wait, what? And like help with NASA. Like Dr. Braun, that's the guy's name.
It is something. I'm telling you, it goes. But we've said it like 3 or 4 times in this show alone. I know people personally that understand the general concept of this and who vocalize their unwillingness to truly understand it. They basically say, listen, I choose to bury my head in the sand. I don't want to know. Like, I'm telling you, I could name 50 friends of mine who have said these words, like 50 close friends of mine that have said, I just choose to ignore it. I just choose to bury my head in the sand.
And that's what they're counting on. And they're going to cull you.
Yeah.
Because you aren't a threat to them.
Right. It's the worst. Man.
Only people, let's put it in Jefferson's terms, well-armed militia.
A well-armed
That is who they're afraid of. Because there's way more of us than them. right? And like what people have experienced in Afghanistan, for example, is infinitely worse than what's even in the American psyche. You think that those people don't have it in them to be patriots? Of course they do. They've been bombed by an enemy that they didn't think was our enemy. Like you and I are responsible for these innocent goat herders being bombed, right? Just for some agenda and proxy that's potentially related to Israel, potentially related to opioid, potentially related to money laundering, potentially related to military industrial complex. Oh shit, it's all of the above.
Wait a second. It's one big network.
And then, Iraq. I mean, just pick your poison. Vietnam was just one of many, right? And then Ukraine. This is a proxy war now. At a level that's like we've now spent more than we did in World War I and World War II.
Of course.
Which
Taking
those
money,
two
man,
wars
money
were
laundering.
fake news also about nothing, where they convinced Christian men to kill each other that were ages 18 to 25. Over what? Can anybody identify the cause of World War I for me?
Not me, but you are a historian of sort.
No, but I'm going to challenge the viewership, because when you realize that from Napoleon on, this has all been a chess game, and a really effed up one, then you can better process the aspects of how this has gone totally FUBAR, and whether it's the purposeful manipulation of the weather that then destroys the climate, whether it's the fake transfer of wealth on ESG, whether it's the trans whatever, which I'm for. Like you want to do whatever you want to do.
We all are, man.
Mhm.
We don't care.
But don't like try and maim children and shit and tell me they can't vote or drink a beer, but they have the cognitive ability to take hormones and stuff. Like, come on, it's got to stop at a point. And it's the same thing with finance, where they have kept the facts away from people. They have purposely created a system of FOMO where you're chasing up and down your entire existence. Like, people have this weird tolerance threshold, and then they fire this person, hire that person, and they lose all the money here, and then they pay all this money to get back into this shit over here. And really it's the same shit, and homogenized it where these investment products are all basically complete bullshit and not diversified. And that has then echoed into the equity market, where I'm there to invest my money in good ideas with good teams, with good opportunities, not just buy into 10 multinational psychopathic huge companies, right? That have no competitors because they're all monopolies. That's not what it was built for, but that's what it is.
I want to talk about, so we went into, low net worth individuals. Sorry if it's not an insult, it's just factual.
That's majority of the population.
It's the majority of the population. Let's go into the middle class. Let's go into, we probably just described middle class. Let's go into like upper middle class, where you've got 100,000 to 500,000 net worth individuals. I want to, just so you can kind of get your mind right on where I want to go with this, but we'll take it wherever the hell we want. I committed to this episode being a conversation with Chris Sullivan. That's all I committed to. I had 2 topics I want. We already hit 2 of them now, but
free game now.
It's free game. What I really want to do, like, I have a lot of friends who listen to the show, family who listen to the show, people that I deeply care about. And I'll tell you what, if you're a supporter of the show, I deeply fucking care about you. If you're not a supporter of the show, I deeply fucking care about you. You're just not a listener yet. And if you disagree with me, I also deeply care about you. I understand the general principle of me deeply caring about others and deeply caring about every single person, voter, every single citizen in this society is paramount to the success of the future of our country. And I also believe, so kind of a next level to that, as you said, 5D earlier, dude, there's so many levels to this. I also understand that the American society, our Constitution, our freedom, the world's freedom depends on it. Mm-hmm. And surely you can go deeper in that.
I mean, we've said that before. The world's freedom depends on our Second Amendment right.
We're it. You said earlier in the show. This is where people fucking militia. Go. This is, my wife said, well, if all this shit goes down, where do we go? I said, we're already fucking here. This is where people go. Where do we go from here?
I don't even want to say this so bad. What were you going to ask? So upper middle class.
I was going to say, yeah, hold that thought. And if you find a spot, plug it. If not, let us know. upper middle class. Let's call it 100,000 to 500,000 net worth individuals. Again, somebody who's got 50 grand in their bank account, they've got a couple $100,000 in their retirement fund, and they've got a couple $100,000 in their equity in their home or their real estate assets, whatever that is. That's what a $500,000 net worth upper middle class is what we would call that, right? Is that
Ish.
upper
Yeah, I mean
class?
they've gutted so much of what we
Yeah,
would
who the
consider
fuck
middle
even
class.
know? Yeah, I don't even know. But those are the people that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And again,
People that could cover an emergency, have slowly invested, have deployed to retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks.
Yeah.
Have done their like civic duty as a good steward.
yeah.
I think
What are they going to do? What do they do? How can they best protect? Again, our goal is to bring every single viewer, every single listener, every single person a couple things. Number one, the encouragement to speak the truth and speak it loudly and don't stop fucking speaking it. Number two, protest. You have the right for now as an American, as whoever you are, to stand strong. Risk whatever it is at risk to stand strong on your core beliefs, your moral values. Don't move from what you know is right. But what do they do financially to prepare?
I think one of the best preparations is actually acting on your legal right as a U.S. voter to, for example, I'll give you real time. Warren Davidson, congressman from Ohio, proposed a bill to out Gary Gensler of the SEC.
Okay.
He did that because they're violating rule of law on all kinds of stuff, and they're coming after crypto as an attack point to not allow for decentralization, right? So one of the things that all of us common folk can do is call, donate, and support those who are putting the fight and putting their feet to the fire. Literally, that's probably the best we can do. And like if certain bills are brought in, like the one on the tech side that basically cuts off the First Amendment at the knees, everybody should be raising hell. And if you're not going to do your civic duty as a voting and tax-paying citizen to try and at least make a call, send an email, you really don't deserve any of the benefits that
You
those
get
who
what
are
Gates
doing
gives
that.
you.
Right. And so I would preface with that as being an action plan everybody should enjoy. That's how I know that there's been 78 petitions for end of chemtrails just year to date.
Year
And
to
all
date
these
this year? Unbelievable.
Goodness.
Yeah, but it's bad because no one's actually acted on it. And it's it's above our blah, 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 blah. But on finance side, like I would underwrite, hey, is my bank, one of the banks that is going to go under right now? So how do you answer that? It's pretty complex. You ought to probably have a financial professional that you get a hold of that can underwrite it or do your own research. But that would be probably my first thing. And then on your expenses, like immediately cut everything you possibly can. And then do the same advice that we gave those who aren't as fortunate as the group we're targeting now, have gold and silver in divisible coins, like 1 ounce silver bars and silver coins, 1 ounce to 1 gram gold bars or gold coins, so that, God forbid, you can actually use them to buy water or food.
Rations.
Then, people at that level can actually invest in some off the grid type things like, okay, do I have a generator? How much fuel can I store for how long? How much power does that get me? Do I have VPN on my front end technology to my house? Do I have a sat phone? Do I have two-way radio so I can communicate with my family and neighbors? Like all of that liquidity can give you the ability to invest in that stuff after you've done, okay, is where I hold my investments and assets going to take them from me right now? Or are they going to go BK? After that, you can then diversify into, I would just advise for Bitcoin currently, and then gold and silver, and then invest in the apparatus that gives you the ability to be proactive and reactive real time to an EMP. Because once people see that this has been happening all over the world, right? Italy was dark for almost 48 hours, no internet, right? Americans need to condition themselves mentally and then obviously physically, if they can, with the right apparatus, to be ready for that and expect that. And like you said, great if it doesn't happen. But if you've got the means to invest to protect your family, why would you not do that? You're literally negligent if you don't do it right now. So I think water filtration, all your various supplements from iodine, I know nuclear, to really, really refined vitamin C, because that's like a miracle in terms of detoxing your body, like triple dose the vitamin C side. So those are the next step after having the cash, gold, silver, Bitcoin, then underwriting the banking side investors, make sure that that's solvent to the degree you can. If it's not, then you need to diversify away from that. Then putting in place your different hedging mechanical mechanisms. And then you get to, like, hopefully you have weapons, right? And so someone in that echelon should be able to afford those couple steps.
So what you're kind of describing,
this is literally checking the box so that you as a man are not negligent, look back in history.
Yeah.
And you can represent the family to the best of your ability if you check those boxes.
Protect your purpose.
Go figure, right?
I mean, did I leave one out? I mean, 6 months dried food. Like these are things that I've done, right? That's all I'm sharing.
And I think that's all we can do is share what we're doing, share what we have, share what we know, what we understand, what we don't understand. There's a lot of shit, honestly, man, that I understand the greater picture of this.
Like for myself, I have 4 banks. I have 4 different credit cards, no ACH, because they can just pull out of your accounts, right? Turn all of that off, no auto pay. If you're retarded and you can't pay your bills on time, God help you.
Yep.
But like, just withdraw yourself from risk where you can. And these are identifiable areas. So you spend $1,000 on 6 months of dried food.
Whatever.
Okay. If you don't need it, sweet.
Yeah. Eat it. Give it away.
Oh.
Donate it. Take it out to the field.
10 grand of cash in Benji's and at, in your safe, and you've got 25 grand of gold and silver. You don't need it? Cool. Your grandkids can have it and it'll be worth 5 times. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Like, right. I don't see how at this point, like, those with a pulse cannot prepare in the very frank fashion I'm describing now.
Tell me this, man. I want to get into, so I have 2 more. Oh, go ahead.
I want to tell you how many rounds I have of which caliber, but I'm not going to say that where they can.
We'll have that conversation offline, and I would love to have that conversation because I want to know where I stand.
I mean, I'm not very, I need more tactical training, but I did what a prudent man would do.
Get fucking guns. We've been saying it, dude. I think on our, probably on our premiere episode, we probably led in with, you have a right. You have a right to bear arms. You have a right to buy firearms. If you don't use it, you lose it. I don't care if you're a gun guy, if you're not a gun guy. First thing you do if you're not a gun guy is go buy a safe. Second thing you do, same day, same trip, go directly from the safe store. You can get them most of the time at the same store. Go directly and buy a gun. I don't care if you want the gun. I don't care if you're afraid of the gun. I'll tell you what, if you're afraid of the gun, don't buy any ammo. Don't buy any ammo. Just have the gun until you learn how to use the gun, and then you'll get comfortable like anything. My kids run around outside. They do backflips, round off, back handspring, backflip. Dude, they do it like as if it's just walking. Why? Because they practiced it. They understand it now. They're not afraid of doing a backflip. It's just what they do. It's just like owning a gun. What if I told you to go do a backflip? Well, you'd probably do it because you're you.
Well, I probably do. Yeah, but I probably fail at it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. And I'm old and
but
would I probably do it? Yeah, I'd probably try it.
Yeah, you'd try it because you would. But the average person is going to be like, I'm not doing no fucking backflip. I'm going to land on my fucking head and break my neck. I'm scared of doing that. No way. But if you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice, you no longer are scared. You learn it. It's second nature. At some point, you get to a point where you can put that pistol fully loaded with no safety, one in the chamber, right in your hip, facing your dong, no problem at all, because you know that gun will not fire itself. It's in a holster. You understand what it takes to fire that, and you need it for self-protection.
Wait, Matt, you mean guns can't kill people?
Guns. I hate. Yeah. For all of the listeners, here's some news for you. Guns.
Is that the ballistics and physics side of it? Oh,
I think that's the ballistics.
I'll write that down.
Exactly. Anyway, what I want to get into real quick before we wrap this thing, and dude, we're gonna have you back on because,
hell yeah,
man, I bet I've got 5 to 10 more hours that we need to talk. Shit. Number one, I want to compare ammo, if for no other reason, to understand where I am and to better myself, and to be more prepared. Guess what? If I don't ever need it, like, God bless it. Thank you, Lord. I don't ever need it for self-defense, but I have it for target practice, and I have it for fun, and I have it for whatever else. Good news, it won't go to fucking waste. It won't expire, I promise, before I use it.
Well, where I go to in my hedging brain, right? I can't help it. Is okay. Let's say, okay, you refuse CBDC, you refuse additional pandemics and shots. What are they going to eventually do? They're going to knock down your door. Then you have to then accept that they're going to take you out. Okay, well, how am I going to go down if they take me out? It's
in a blaze of glory.
What I will be remembered for.
That's right.
And if people can't get to that point mentally, you're not going to be able to raise the consciousness around you where your family and our family and friends can rise above the terror and the fear that's crippling all of us from getting an ounce of wisdom out of what our genealogy knows and about what we've learned up here.
Yeah, man.
Right.
It's a little easier.
You have to raise the consciousness level so that people can collectively rise above the fear. And then, dude, I'm actually not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
Not like I do not fear them coming to the door. I don't.
Nope.
Do I want it? No, it doesn't mean I'm saying, hey, line up. No, but like you have to come full circle and have that self-awareness where, look, I can control these things. I can prepare in this order, and the rest of it's in God's hands.
This is emotional. This is logical. This could happen, and it's in God's hands. You nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, man, I'm left speechless. There's a couple things I want to talk about before we wrap, but I want to talk about the upper class, what they should do, because I've got a lot of very high net worth friends.
Well, the really smart, really upper class guys are already doing it all.
I've got a lot of really wealthy, high net worth individuals that are dear and close friends of mine. Let's talk two tiers. You've got kind of a lower upper class and an upper class. I think the higher, I think maybe the informed, we'll call it the informed. The informed in all classes are doing everything they can. I think we're adding some value by saying, hey, in these class systems, here's what you could do. You could start here. You can go here. You can go here. I want to talk about that. And then I want you to give us, after we talk about the upper class and what they should do with their assets, those guys, girls, men and women, people, they've got $1 million in assets, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million in assets. They've got, like most don't have a whole shit ton of liquid.
Yeah.
But what should they be doing? And then I kind of want you to give us the long and the short of Bitcoin. I've been a skeptic, and I'm just the eternal skeptic on everything. I feel like that's why I'm able to see things. And
that's my setting too.
Yeah. Like I don't fucking believe anything until I'm proven otherwise.
In science, you lead with null hypothesis, right? Yeah. You're disproving everything to prove something. That's skepticism is like both the barrier and the entry point to all of wisdom.
For sure.
You have to be a skeptic.
Skepticism is a God-given understanding of reality that we understand. It's not racism. It's not sexism. It's I'm just aware of, I'm just skeptical of everything. You put something in my face, I don't know if that's going to harm me. That's why we survived, because we have skepticism.
I mean, feelings are for people of, I won't be mean, but got to do our best to balance our emotions with
for sure
facts.
Right.
So to address like the ultra wealthy.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
I mean, why do you think hedge funds exist in the first place?
Sure.
It's because if we lose, you deduct it off your income. And if you win, it's in a really effective vehicle that allows for that asymmetry to be compounded.
Yeah. If you win, you find something else to deduct it off your income.
well, because ultimately you can't get past paying short-term capital gains from trading, right? So that's your like top echelon, which you already are aware of, and anything better than that's good. And if you lose, you deduct it off income. Like, so that's why hedge funds exist. They're usually in different sectors. Ours happens to be just digital assets, right? And half or more is Bitcoin related trading and investing. Most ultra wealthy, they only invest in those. They have a family office, right, that actually delineates, okay, I'm going to put this in this fund, this and that fund. And they weight the percentages of, okay, it's 30% real estate, 70% traded, blah, blah, blah. If it's private equity, if it's quant, if it's fundamental, they blend all of those different strategy diversifications to match the asset classes and the duration of whatever they want to do with their money. So that's why hedge funds exist, right? And most of the ultra who are in the know have already done not only that diversification, but all of the other steps I've told you. Just add zeros to those different things.
Right.
And then, put farmland or investing in a farm in there as well, so that they secure a food supply and water supply for their family.
Food and water. So if you're a high net worth individual, which is why the cost of farmland and game,
Because you're basically going to burn money. Like, you're not going to win.
that's right.
Right. But again, hedging costs money.
Yeah, exactly. Hedging costs money. Explain that concept. Hedging costs money for the people who don't understand.
So you have this amount of risk.
Yep.
And then you have this many ways to hedge that risk. And when you choose one or more of those ways, you are spending equity to withdraw that proportion of risk to do it.
It's like an insurance policy, man.
Like,
You want
you
insurance?
don't want your insurance policy to pay because you're dead. You know why? Because you're fucking dead.
Because you're I love that. Because you're fucking dead. Right. You know
So-
why I won't care? Because I'll be fucking dead.
And then to Bitcoin, it's literally the most important invention in mankind's history.
How do we trust it though,
Or none.
Chris?
Oh, how do you trust it, man? Do you want
Tell
to read your bedtime story?
Yeah.
Oh, how do
Chris
I
does
trust the
not-
556 I just bought?
Yeah.
You try it out,
Yeah,
right?
you just go.
You try it out. You put it in the chamber and you fire.
Yep.
Chris,
Do you have the risk of it backfiring and hitting you in the eye? Yeah, you do.
Chris,
That's
quick
right.
question for you. Would this be a kind of a good way to put it in layman's terms for Bitcoin? Is to trust Bitcoin is to trust yourself, because no one has the hand in the cookie jar except you, correct?
It's in a way, yes, but it's black and white code. Like, there's no trusting or not trusting. It is whether you believe it is or not. And that's what's amazing about it, is that the blocks that are confirmed per transaction are only so many to create the token, 21 million, and are these complex algorithms to solve the block transactions to create the coin, as well as to provide the throughput for B2B transactions, right? This is without human interference, without changing, and is finite. You don't have to believe or feel or trust in a MFing thing with it. You can go into the mempool and look at it real freaking time.
I was just going to say, how do we know that there's only 20? You said 21 million. That's the number. That's the maximum amount of Bitcoin that can be farmed. That's the top end. That's what makes it finite. It's finite.
Yeah, because there's already been 3 forks away from it, because that's finite. You've got and you've got famous BCH and BSV. Those were hard forks. One in 2017, where like the community said, we don't like this, we're going to change that, and then poof, they hard fork it, and then those tokens are worth 0.
Yep.
So that plus actually participating in the network, like when you actually dive into it and then you realize what it is, the price of it in USD is the opportunity, not the risk.
What do you say to the people who are saying, I'm going to wait? I believe in Bitcoin. I want to get into Bitcoin. I understand it provides me sovereignty, some sense of freedom and control over my own maybe potential future whole ass financial ability. But say, I'm afraid of Bitcoin and its future. Like, what if the government shuts it down?
Then you're a slave any freaking way.
Yeah.
Like, go F yourself, you idiot. It's your one fucking chance to not be a slave. And if this doesn't work, it's over. Bar none.
Bitcoin
Like, so
is it?
even if I hate it or think it's a Ponzi or blah blah blah, the bed that we will have made for ourselves if we don't try is over.
So what do you say?
Could there be another asset created?
Yeah, for sure.
Because we know so much of this now, and like, if I had a billion, could I build a lab and build something better? Maybe.
Why,
Sure.
So why
That-
Bitcoin and none others?
none others currently.
Right. So
'Cause,
potentially
right,
in the future.
Dude, because you can't speak in absolutes.
Yeah.
All I can say that is kind of an absolute now is that up until this point, this is the greatest monetary asset mankind has ever had the privilege of participating in. Period. Better than gold and more sovereign than any fiat, because fiat's like the absence of sovereign,
Of course.
right? It only goes one direction. And to not think that I need to have assets like farmland, gold, silver, and Bitcoin and a couple of other worthy digital assets, because they all solve for different things. For example, Ethereum solves for the Web 2 oligarchy, right? And already 100% of the supply that's ever going to be created is out, and it pays you near a 5% yield to own it. Oh, that's a lot of good reason to own Ethereum. What does Bitcoin do? It upends all of the political and central bank power and allows businesses to save 600 basis points a year. It allows you and I to transact frictionless in real time, 25 million transactions per second is the current capacity of the Lightning Network. So it's better than Visa, MasterCard, Bank of America, JP Morgan put together, has no risk of CBDC, has no risk of ESG. Dude, and guess what? You can't have a fucking proxy war if Bitcoin's the collateral for the planet. Tell me what's wrong with it, dude. Oh, can it be upended by a better asset in the future? Oh my God, awesome. Because that would be like the Jesus coin or something. And I make fun of it because that's the current level. It's been tried to be hacked for over a decade straight, and no one's hacked it, dude.
So
you're going to tell me that blockchain's weak?
No.
Smartest people on earth are trying to break it constantly.
They can't. Let me ask you this. All right, let's just say those same people I'm talking about.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you answered. You answered the questions of many of my viewers. I'm certain.
and it's not in a vacuum, dude. It's just what is the right matrix of real assets to invest in.
So where do I get it?
Hold on.
Is that where you're going?
Nope. What I want to say is, let's say those same people, the skeptics, the people who have it, they're, all right, I believe in it. I want to go, all that shit. Same people. Purchase point. When do they buy it? Other than now, do they wait for the next dip? Is there a next dip? I mean, I know you can't predict any markets, any future, but is it one of those things where you say,
well, you tell me it was 70,000. It's now 29,000. Is that a good time to buy it when it's half off?
We're on a dip, is what my friend Chris Sullivan is saying.
I mean, but then you got to
friend-
put it in perspective. Like, people think real estate's actually made money. It's never made money, ever, unless you're buying and selling at the pinpoints of the cycle. Why? Because it costs about 8% when you take the carry of insurance, property management, upkeep, landscaping, your note on the loan. It's about right now it's about 13% because loans are 7-8%, but call it 8 over time. And its rate of appreciation has not even come close to the stock market. And you have to deduct that. So if, I bought this for 200,000 in 2010, it's 600,000 now, but it cost me 300,000 from 2010 to 2023. Did I even make any money? No, I didn't. I actually lost opportunity cost by not being invested in the NASDAQ. Sure. So like, people anchor to these lies, and you have to appraise each of these assets factually.
Oh, make no mistake about it. The money that is made in the real estate market is not what you just described as a potential market. The money that is made in the real estate market is the money that is bought on the sale. It is money that people have said, I'm going to buy this property for $200,000, and within fucking 10 days, I'm going to sell that property for fucking $400,000, and I'm going to invent money, be it by way of my salesmanship ability, or I'm getting just a good ass deal on the front end because I'm connected in some way, or I found a good deal. All of the money on the real estate market is not made over time.
Right.
Like that's obvious.
No, it's just illusions. Like, same thing as like, hey, the S&P has made 7% a year for what, blah, blah. Well, sure, aggregated over time, but it's been disrupted with these giant 50, 60, 70% retracements every 11 years or so, right? So like, everybody needs to apply what's stomachable for them to then divide their assets accordingly. Like, the thing that I don't like about real estate, even farmland, guess what they're doing in Canada? They're eminent domaining these mofos against the violation of law. Like, I've actually heard from my clients in Canada, 2 huge farms that supported truckers and supported a anti-trans law protest.
Sure.
They got the bank that had their mortgage to seize their checking account. Then when they defaulted on their monthly mortgage payment, they called the note and seized the property. So I may own an apartment
Yeah,
complex
lazy.
in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ladies and gentlemen, but that could be literally taken from me. The same as the 500K I might have at Chase can be bailed into 5K on CBDC if I just leave it sitting there. Like, you have to be aware of what can happen to this. They cannot take this. They got to come take my cash and gold from the house or where other places I've stored it. They've got to come take the pumpkin patch we have at the farm. Like, those things, it's not the valuation that matters. It's the function that they provide your peace of mind and your family security.
Holy shit, Chris, man. What a conversation. What value you have brought to me personally. I know Zach.
Me personally,
I could see Zach
my head
across.
is spinning right now.
I
dude.
see Ian behind his little screen over there, like Wilson from Home Improvement, shaking his head at his screen. He's our first viewer, by the way. Everything we produce, he's the first one, and I could see his nods back there going, all right, shit, I see it. I know for a fact our listeners and our viewers are going to get a shitload of value from this. It's what we tried to do, man. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show. I want your commitment right now in front of everyone who's watching and everyone who will watch that you will come back on this show and give us more of your knowledge and information.
Yes, I'm willing to come back on the show and do the
Got
best
him.
I can impart whatever little wisdom I've accrued. over
Your
the years.
contract will be in your email.
Yeah, you got that's right. You'll have that right away.
Well, you'll need to learn how to send me a smart contract over cryptocurrency.
That's right.
If you really want me to execute.
That's
something.
right. Listen, we got
Forcing
that.
me to learn, Chris.
Listen, I'm actually starting a business, and I'll hop in real quick. Ian hates when I do this. The whiskey business that I'm getting into, I have a membership program that is going to be strictly NFT or crypto contracts, whatever that looks like. And I know I'm going to push out a whole shitload of a part of the population as people who are going to understand how to do that early on. Hopefully, I'm able to do it before any meltdown and collapse where it allows me to do so. But I'll be seeking your input on how to do that and what the best way to do that as well. I appreciate all of your advice, your friendship over all these years, dude. Please send your family my love. We will have you back on. And until next time, make sure that we and you and all of you find your purpose, serve your purpose, and protect your purpose, people.